That glorified house show and I are back, so let's get betting and give out all 4 winners. Even though you can't see me the last 2 weeks, we're still ready to go and make our picks for Saturday night's main event. But first, as always, we start with our recap, and we went 4-1 at Backlash, with Becky Lynch surprising us by taking the L to keep Lyra Valkyria as the women's IC champion, but that does give us an 80% winning percentage, which is exactly where we want to be. And so we also want to talk about the units and our new betting technique, and we put 3 units up in play, and we won 2 of those and lost that full unit bet on Becky, so we are up 1 unit for the year. But next, we always like to go to the history, and Saturday night's main event is back again, and if you're counting at home, that makes this Saturday night's main event number 39. And as always, we have to start with the 2 things you must always remember. Number 1, champions retain. And number 2, it is a glorified house show. So as to point 1, with Gunther, Breakker, and Rhea Ripley all retaining in January, new champions have been crowned in only 2 of 54 title matches. But we have to remember that in the 31 Saturday night's main events from 1985 to 1992, we had 48 title matches, and 10 of them ended with the champion retaining by a DQ, a double DQ, a countout, or a double countout, which is 20.83% of the time. And since this is the 3rd Saturday night's main event in this new era, we have to look back at the original Saturday night's main event number 3, where Tito Santana retained his IC title over the Macho Man Randy Savage by a double countout. Okay, so we will come back to that point a little bit later. But as to point 2, we got some true house show material when Braun Strowman was credited with a DQ win when the ref decided that Jacob Fatu had apparently been too rough with his hip attacks to keep the match from going on any longer. So we simply have to be extra cautious for truly absurd results that just might happen in this event, and just like you might see at any house show. So with that, let's get to the matches, and first is a non-title match between John Cena at -5,000 for a 98.04% implied probability versus R-Truth, his childhood hero, at +1,000 for a 90.09% implied probability. So why John Cena here? Well, he is the champ, and he actually needs to look strong to get a definitive win for a change. And since he is booked for Money in the Bank, which is just 2 weeks away, I have to assume that he'll have a title match there, and it would obviously be a very bad look if he somehow lost this one. So why could we take R-Truth here? I guess a non-title match makes this a non-0% chance, but since Truth's goal is to beat Cena back to his own senses, I guess a cheap roll-up win isn't going to be enough. But I suppose a title shot to the head or a low blow to give Cena a DQ loss is in play here. So at -5,000, a non-title match, and a glorified house show rule in effect, I guess we can't go big here, so Cena is still the pick to win in front of his current hometown fans for the last time, but we're going to limit this to a 1/4 unit bet. Match number 2 is a steel cage match between Damian Priest as a slight favorite at -200 for a 66.67% implied probability, taking on Drew McIntyre at +150 for a 40% implied probability. Well, for WrestleMania, we noted that McIntyre needed to get 1 win back here, and of course he did, but then Priest went right back to winning another in-match confrontation when he gave him a South of Heaven chokeslam off equipment boxes and threw some tables on the floor. So why would we take Damian Priest here? Well, no disrespect to him, but it always feels like he's on a shakier ground to remain relevant. And we know that Triple H does indeed love to keep this guy relevant, but this is just the second one-on-one match between these 2 men in 2025, so you would think that getting this win back here from WrestleMania makes sense. And not just that, this goes back to Cena as well. because as we just said, he is announced to appear at Money in the Bank, so we need someone to be his opponent there. So whoever wins this match makes the most sense for that to be his opponent, and Priest just makes way more sense than McIntyre right now for that spot. Plus, with that Judgment Day connection, Damian Priest could easily step in to try to make up for Truth getting absolutely wrecked on this particular show. So with only one Cena SmackDown appearance scheduled before Money in the Bank, I think this is it right here. But why could we take McIntyre? Well, because he did just get destroyed by Priest again in that US title match, so he could be the one who's owed some payback now. But that interaction with Sikoa, Fatu, and the new JC Mateo on SmackDown simply makes it look like things are pointing to those guys for his soon-to-be next opponent, particularly a soon-to-be babyface Fatu at Night of Champions. So it just makes a little bit too much sense here for Damian Priest to get this win, so Priest is our pick, and we're willing to give this a half-unit bet. Up third, we have a tag team match between Seth Rollins and Braun Breaker. They are at minus 3,000 for a 96.77% implied probability, and they're taking on CM Punk and Sami Zayn plus 900 for 10%. So why Rollins and Breaker? Do you remember last year when we had Sikoa and Tama Tonga beat Randy Orton and Kevin Owens at Backlash last year? Well, this is your 2025 version of that match, because we simply must give credibility to the new faction here in their first match together, and there's simply nothing more traditional booking than this. And yes, glorified house show rules must be considered here, but it is hard to see a scenario where the good guys sneak this out and then get destroyed after the match, or the bad guys just end up not caring about the result and start cracking these dudes with some chairs to get back for what happened on Raw. But why might we go with Punk and Zayn? And yeah, what I just said basically, glorified house show rules. But it is possible we could see just a bit of dissension between these two instead, which is kind of what they implied in their interaction on Raw. So that could cost them here, and then they just might oppose each other in a triple threat match on Raw for qualifying for Money in the Bank. So in the end, I feel very confident that they keep to the traditional script here, and Rollins and Breaker get the win, and we're giving this a full 1-unit bet. And in our final match, we have the World Heavyweight Championship with Jey Uso at minus 10,000. Wow! And that's a 99.01% implied probability, taking on Logan Paul at plus 2,000 for a 4.76% implied probability. So why Jey here? As we always say, at Saturday night's main event, champions retain, and it seems like his path is already set in stone with Paul, then Gunther, and then Rollins, and we simply can't get that if he loses here. So why could Logan Paul get a win here? Well, remember when we said that champs retain 20% of the time by DQ, double DQ, count out, or double count out? Yeah, it's that reason. Because Gunther interacted with Paul on Raw, and while that could be a red herring, it could also be very meaningful. And in fact, I am predicting it right now that we get a triple threat match at Money in the Bank, as I don't think anyone is clamoring for another Jey versus Gunther matchup where it seems like the only outcome could be Gunther losing again. So why don't we find a way to make that not happen and make that match a triple threat instead, so it is certainly easy enough to have Gunther interfere in this match, and then Paul can get attacked by Gunther to give Paul the DQ win. And that does sound like a perfect glorified house show thing to do to set up the match that they actually want to give us. But even so, we simply cannot justify picking this huge of an upset here, so Jey is of course our pick to win, but the odds of shenanigans are way higher to give Paul an excuse to get into triple threat match at Money in the Bank. So this is simply a stay away 0-unit play or if you must, I guess you can give it a little sprinkle. We've got just 4 matches on the card right now, so maybe we'll get a women's match on SmackDown tonight, because it has been a while since we haven't had a single women's match on a PLE card. But all the favorites, yet again, are our picks in this very brief recap. So, John Cena, Damian Priest, Seth Rollins and Braun Breaker, and Jey Uso are our picks to win. And as always, remember never to bet more than you can afford to lose, but at least we can all enjoy this glorified house show on free TV. But if you missed that big announcement about future endeavoring a certain someone, be sure to go right on over here and check that out. And until next time, I am the SportsZu, and this has been, I guess it's been a podcast that needs a new name.